All right, guys, sorry about that. Off to a great start. My microphone was actually switched off for some reason. It's Ben here from Second Dynasty. New camera this week, and also a slight new focus, although this is the second week we're actually showing off the Type S that we're currently working on. I have actually made some posts to one of the Traveler RPG Facebook groups. So if you're joining us from that and seeing us for the first time, what we're actually all about, I will explain to you in a second. But first, I wanted to introduce my co-hosts. Zorma, say hello, Zorma.
Hello, nice to meet y'all.
And we also have John from John Games.
Hello, John Games.
He is unique. Um, so Zorma is our resident light expert and also 3D printing guru, which is basically what we're all about, the 3D printables. You might be able to see some of our existing ships in the background. I will preview them later. What you actually see in front of you right now is Autodesk Maya, which is the software package that I use to design 3D printable ships. Um, so uh, John, on the other hand, is developing a piece of software known as Deck Designer, which is actually going to make things easier to organize when you want to customize your ships. So, the long and short of it, or the way I should introduce myself, is that I own the company Second Dynasty. My name is Ben. I live in Sweden. I was born in Australia, which explains the accent. And I, for the last 3 years, have been making 28 millimeter scale or 1 to 60 scale 3D printable modular starships and interiors. And this all started actually when I was playing Traveller last, which would have been Mongoose second edition, I believe. And so I wanted to, make customizable deck plans in 3D using a 3D printer to make it into a physical product. And it kind of got out of hand, and I had some luck on Kickstarter, and I've been fortunate enough to be doing this full time for the last 2 years. We most recently did an expand style ship. I'll just maybe, hopefully, this still works. You can see in the background our expanse themed ships, and then we have Albin back here as well, who we'll be checking in with later because he's working on the Beowulf. And you can kind of see like the 3D printable ships that we've put out. Usually they're kind of themed to a kind of universe. Um, I can actually get the camera off and let's see, move it about a bit so you guys can kind of see.
Link to the previous Kickstarter if you're interested in looking at those ships too.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's all on my mini factory, and I believe. Did you post that link? I think so.
I did.
Um,
Post the link
um,
I posted.
yeah. So these, with the exception of the VF4, of course, I just got that in the post today, so I wanted to compare it because it's the same scale. This is the most recent ship I've been working on. This is called the Chimera. Um, I just got some of the interior working, so we actually do miniatures as well. This was part of the last Kickstarter. Sorry, I can't get the autofocus to work on this. Um, so yeah, we make miniatures for 3D printing, and we also make full-scale ships. So you can kind of see from my hand here the size of this. This is approximately 75 centimeters, or about 2.5 feet. Um, we go for the detail. You can kind of see in here there's actually a pilot gunner. We've got these sort of gun turrets, and we try to make it, as interactive as possible. So I've just laid down the mid deck or printed that out in the last week or two. Of course, this hasn't got any paint on it at the moment, and you can kind of see what it looks like when it's fully painted. Let's see if this comes into focus. We've done Modular Starfighters. This is one of my earlier ships. And then, yeah, like the Expanse style ships, we do have even the. You can probably barely hear me now, but the, PDCs that come out. So we do get into the high detail levels, and we have been. Oh, let me just fix this again and have a seat. Oh, that's a bit
You
high.
include light kits for a lot of the newer projects now that you basically can self-install that are all pre-linked together with no assembly required to basically put in wiring and the battery and stuff you need to light up your ship. We'll be doing the same thing for the traveler ships.
Yes, we will indeed. So hopefully that's just a general idea of what we're doing. And normally we'd be checking in with Zorma and John about their respective projects. This week it's kind of like a little bit more of like, we did show off the Type S last week. I'm going to show you the progress I've made since then, and also bring up the headaches that have come along with it. I think Albin might agree there's even more headaches on the Beowulf, unfortunately, which is funny because I thought the Beowulf would be easier. So yeah, we usually work with the OpenLog system, and the OpenLog system uses these 3D printable clips, like so, and you sort of just use this as a snapping point to stick into like a door frame and put the pieces together in a modular Lego sort of fashion. But they have these built-in walls, which are about a ½ inch thick in the best cases. And that is kind of way too thick for Traveller, where you've got these modular sections that, are meant to fit in to the design and into the frame. And one thing with Traveller that we figured out very quickly once we got started is that there is an incongruence between the appearance of the ships and where the decks are, especially the floor plans of lower decks are the worst to work with because the floor space is a lot more restrictive than would be indicated by the deck plans. So let's just take off the top hull. Oh, I've got to stick that in here. And look at the frame so far that we've been laying out. I've just imported one of my turrets from one of my previous ships in for the time being. But by the way, this is an official license. We are in. I talk to Mark Miller a couple of times a week about getting feedback with particular pieces and solutions to issues. So we are going to have our standard turret port that we'll use, so that you'll be able to use not just the turrets we make for Traveller, but also our past turrets. If you want this one, for example, it would be compatible with it. So we're kind of just in the middle of reconciling things at the moment. So I've put all of this structure in and ribbing. There's a few pieces that are just missing at the moment because I've been working on them. But let's turn out the upper bulkheads there and turn off the upper deck floor there. And even if we turn off the floor in the sort of engineering section, you can kind of see into the cavity we have below, and you can kind of see almost immediately where the issues lie. The scout ship's always been small, and there are numerous versions I've discovered. The one that we're sort of basing the deck plans off is going to be the T5 one, because, well, that's the one that Mark Miller is sort of sorting out himself. And so the deck plans we're going off are basically the Murphy. I believe you should see this in the background now. So there, I've gotten the deck plans from numerous different versions. I've all laid them out in 3D and sort of put them and arranged them so that we would have this 25-inch long ship. And it for one thing, where the bulkheads are vary from variant to variant, which is an issue because while I want to have as much modularity as possible, it's not always possible because of the restrictions. If I go back to Maya and we just look at what one of these open lock tiles looks like, a very basic one, you have these built-in clip supports, then this hole where the clip goes into, and we do need like a fair amount of chunk of the floor for supporting the actual the actual clip system. And that becomes an issue on a ship like the Scout, because we quickly run into situations like here where we have the vehicle at the back, which in itself is very, very small. And not to mention the fact that, 28mm can be quite inconsistent from miniature designer to miniature designer. It's supposed to be from feet to the eye level for a 6-foot person, or 180 is around about the 28mm mark. In reality, it ends up usually being a bit taller than that, so it can look a bit cramped.
Does it need to be bigger, a bigger, larger model in order to make it more?
Well, from my conversations with Mark, he pretty much was very adamant on the actual shape, and basically we would have to make it bigger if we're going to make it compatible with OpenLock. Instead, what I'm trying to do is figure out a way where we'll basically have the floor, for the most part, will be built in, and then you'll be able to customize the partitions a bit.
Okay.
On the Scout ship. On the Beowulf, we're hoping to have more modularity in that, but we are discovering, like, we had a bit of a meeting this morning talking about this version and the inconsistencies. We have this side version of the ship, and it just makes literally zero sense. Like, this clinic on the side actually has a floor that's, on this angle. The cargo ramp itself is not actually deep enough to allow, a 3 by 3 by 4.5 meter cargo container to actually fit into the ship. The landing gear as well actually blocks off loading the cargo as it is. Not to mention that these sleeper pods, the cryopods that are here, well, there's this one here under the stairs, and yeah, it's got to fit into this cavity with a slanted floor. It doesn't work in 3D. And then a couple other things like, presumably you want to have a walkway here through the cargo, and, you've got this hatch in the floor. There's ways to sort that out, but also this ladder that comes down over the ramp from the 3rd story. It's going to take some reconciling. We can have a look at that model in a little bit.
So you're saying this is like the Simpsons house?
Now I'm saying it's like the TARDIS. There's like a swimming pool in here somewhere. Ironically, the cargo hold is actually a lot bigger than it needs to be to fit 7 containers, which would be 82 tons of cargo. So there is, this sort of reconciling how things are actually, could work or should work. And then I guess there's fuel in here, but it doesn't look like there's tons of fuel. Although this is just a jump one. So it's a bit of a nightmare. We're probably going to have to compromise here and make it about 1.5 meters taller overall, and just sort of like have it keep the same sort of shape. But this is the other issue. Passenger commons here. Look at the ceiling. That's like, from top to bottom, you're talking about maximum 2 meters around here. So, this, and if you actually look at what it looks like here, there's just not enough room for a lift. These, staterooms, the bunks don't have enough room to actually be where they are. There's just not enough clearance. So one thing we'll probably do is just shift this level up a little, but we may have to remap the interior because it just doesn't work like it is. Like this corridor, where is it? There's no room for it. This is that corridor right there. Like,
makes sense to me.
Does it? Oh,
yeah, just gotta think in 8 dimensions.
John, you're on a different plane of existence, aren't you? I don't know know what that is. If maybe someone's phone or something. Anyway, why don't we just go and check in briefly with Albin? I've got to try and maneuver the microphone and the camera. So let me know if this isn't coming through right, because this is I'm not going to be able to get any. All right, I'll put the microphone down there, and then let's see. Oh wait, hang on.
We're looking professional now, guys.
Oh yes. All right, Alvin, what are we looking at?
Yeah, we're looking at a great big mess of things everywhere. Well, basically, what we have here is a bisection of the Beowulf, and this is like from a CAD originally that we converted and made more usable in Maya. So I've used this as a baseline to try and figure out where all the floor plans are going. So there are a bunch of boxes here in different colors. What we are actually looking at is like different decks. For hopefully you can check it out like this. So there's like different floor plans that I've tried to map out. So these are the I can't remember what you call it in English, but resting areas for the crew and passengers, I guess.
The stateroom.
Stateroom. Oh, right. This back here is supposed to be a garage for a grav vehicle in this area, I think. Oh, shit.
There's not much room there,
Not
no.
much room.
But we can go down a little if we have to.
Yeah, so we can modify it in different directions, I guess. Then I've been looking at all the different floors basically. So there's like this main floor, deck B. That's where the bridge is. We have like 5 crew members, and yeah, I think it's like a luxury room and a other crew room, I guess, over here. We're supposed to have some sort of stairs around here, but as you can see, we have interpenetration through the hull. That's a big issue, I guess. You don't want
It's beautiful
to be outside the ship when you fly around in space. So we're going to figure something out, I guess.
This is what we mean by the inconsistencies and how incongruent it is between the map and the 3D model. And in fact, I think the 3D model we've been provided with by Mark is actually of a different kind, because looking through the T5 one, the art for that seems a bit flatter and wider. So we will be widening that out, but this is a case where we'll probably scale up the hull a little, just because it's not going to fit in. But we've kind of arrived at the conclusion. We haven't broken the news to Mark today yet, but I think we'll be changing the layout of those 4 decks. So instead of 3 levels, you're going to just have 2.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this cross section here, this area here is supposed to be 3 levels. So you have med bay over here. So you basically have to crawl in and treat your patients, I guess. And also the cryo sleep chambers, we are not at their position at the moment. But then you have the second floor that leads to the bridge, and this general area where you can chill out, I guess, grab a donut and sleep on the floor. It's going to be tight. So we need to reshuffle a few things there, I think. Another issue, I mean, like I think, did you mention it about the landing gear?
Yeah, well, there are a few versions. I can show some of the images we've been given where I've seen that they actually have 2 forward landing gears on either side, and that is a 3D model, and obviously someone that's run into this problem before. So right now this is what we just call like block out or white boxing phase, where we just try and figure everything out before we get into the nitty gritty. So you're just going to see like recycled parts that we've already had, where we're just trying to figure out what the space is. Because ideally we want to make this modular for you guys, or as modular as possible. And so yeah, there are quite a few challenges, and now Albin's stuck with that. All right.
We love you, Alvin.
Oh, thank you, man.
All right, let's.
Who was that anyway?
Remember, if you're new with us, the goal of these ships are designed so that you can use them in gameplay to, be your model for your ship you're using in gameplay, and have your fight in the ship or whatever. So we're going to try to make them as accurate to the game mechanics obviously as we can, but we still want to make them modular so that you can change the ship's parts around as you grow and change your ship, because people add decks or change layers or change where a stateroom is or knock one out because of gameplay reasons. We want to make it so that you can do that. That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the one I was talking about, where they've drawn it up, and you can kind of see from the base of the ship too. It's a little bit flatter. This would be to get additional floor space. This version's a lot wider too. So, but basically, we're just trying to figure out the compromises to make, essentially. So, hopefully, it will work out all right. But you can kind of see that these 3D models are a lot skinnier than this map is. So we'll be going for this sort of baseline, and I believe this was in some T5 deck plans that Mark put out a couple of years ago.
So I don't really know the Traveler series very well. Is it a tabletop game, or is it a book series? What is the main core of it?
Paper RPG.
Yeah, it is
Thank you.
basically the D&D of sci-fi.
Ah, that's pretty cool. Thank you.
So it was like one of those games that came out in the late 70s and was kind of like the first sort of real widespread iconic universe. It is a bit harder sci-fi, but it is kind of like Star Wars without the Force in a way, because they still have artificial gravity on most ships, and they have different technology levels. So you can visit a Mad Max planet if you want, where there's people are driving cars through the desert and can't get off world, or you can visit these places where it's like they literally have the remnants of extremely high-tech stuff like Dyson spheres and that sort of thing. So it can vary very greatly in Traveller. The big change from last week is the rear landing gear. If you look at, I don't know if I've got the plans up here. This isn't the one. Let's see. It's a bit of a mess of different references in here. Here we can see the landing gear of the Type S. I don't know if I mentioned it, but we're also doing the 3-deck Type S, so not the B one here. The twin engines. Mark gave me free reign of placement of the engines, but I'll probably do some stretch goals so you can just change the built-in placement a little bit. Maybe even do a back that looks like the classic Traveller one, because if you look at the deck plans here, wait, where do we have them? You can kind of see this tapers off at the back, but this is an image from classic Traveller. This is not actually the same scout ship. I found out the hard way. This actually has like a flatter back, and it actually tapers here. There's like a little triangle, so you can kind of just vaguely see that line there. So it may be possible to do something like that. But yeah, it is about compromise. We've already moved up the cockpit slightly higher so that the pilots can actually see out the windows. That was also an issue with the deck plans. The little bay for the hover vehicle that you have, the raft, sorry, was actually a half, 0.75 meters to the right, but it's just like you can already see here that with these bulkheads, we've just not got the floor space in here to play around with it. So this is being moved over, and the other side will have, I guess, an airlock. And then I've seen fan ships where there's a way to load cargo at the back that's not on most of the images I've seen, but the rear is very seldom seen anyway, so it seems like we have some variants. Mostly, Dave, what do you mean by the rider truck, Beowulf? Just before I got started here, I was just looking at the rooms and trying to figure out how we can sort of make them modular. That's the other thing, even the doors for the rooms. I'm not trying to knock on things here, but the artwork is I've been provided with is quite basic. Like these look like colored inks to me, but we can get some inspiration from the designs. I'm probably going to second
Can I ask?
Dynastify it.
Yeah. How does that door go into the
Yeah,
wall?
this is exactly my next issue that I was about to bring up, John. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, it's impossible. Look at that door. What the hell?
Yeah, these doors are quite an issue. So I actually cut one of them up, and basically, yeah, this is what the door frame looks like when you try to open it. So, I mean, this could disappear a bit further, but that's the other thing. Like, the doors are offset, but they can't actually slide open in two directions. There's no room for it. Like, if we take this over here, A, you'd be hitting your knee on this little thing jutting out. B, the door would be jutting out of the actual partition.
I can't even figure out what's like. You would have to have 3 telescoping in, and it still wouldn't work. It would just be close.
Oh, but my friend, wait until we get to the really weird, because these door frames are meant to be irises, and an iris has to be circular to work. I'm assuming that what we see in the corner of this image is maybe what they're referring to as an iris, but I really cannot tell. It could just be like I think in the engine room, yeah, we have this sort of bulkhead door which has the same issue. Like they just either need to open, like here it would be all right. You'd have room in the wall to move it, but you'd still have these parts jutting out. So I've sent an email to Mark. I hope to get some feedback about that. And yeah, we'll see. All right, mostly Dave. Let's see what you were saying. Which Beowulf was it? You were mentioning the Ryder Truck Beowulf.
It's got the Ryder Truck colors.
I don't know what that is.
Well, go back. One more. Back
Mosley
again.
Dave does bring up a very good point.
One more. Right there. See, there's a Ryder Truck. There's a truck right. Stop. Go back forward one.
Oh, this one.
Down a little bit. There's a truck right there.
Yeah,
See the truck?
you'll catch up.
See the colors? And the Beowulf has the same colors.
Right.
So
you're talking about the yellow stripe one? Or...
Yeah. It's a Beowulf.
Right.
Ryder Truck for. You're saying do the Ryder Truck because then you have enough square space for it to work.
Right. Okay. We've just diverted for like 5 minutes on what was just a joke.
Just a joke. We got it mostly, Dave. We had to go back for it.
So yeah, the doors are a challenge. Here we actually this is what to me what an iris would look like, right? Basically, we're talking about if you think of Alien, the original film, the
Stargate
79 film. Stargate also has an iris, yes, that locks the Stargate.
That is the description in the game too. An iris hatch valve is just like that. It's supposed to be just like an alien. So that is correct.
So up and down is great, but when it comes to moving through corridors where there's supposed to be inset on the walls, it makes less sense. So I don't know. I'll have to talk to Mark about that or remind him to check his mail.
Should the hatch just be bigger round rather than door shaped anyway?
You could, but then you're not talking about something that takes up 5 feet like you are here where you got the frame right. You're talking about something larger. Like even if we took this and scaled it up, so let's just duplicate this real quick, move it into 90 degrees. That was 105, right? That's 90. So let's get this in front of the door, move it up to halfway, and then just scale it up so it is approximately 5 feet across. So let's just go one more. All right, that would be a full 5 feet. This is what we're talking about. Like, this just might be me, but I don't know how efficient an iris would be for keeping pressure neutral on one side or the other. That's not really up for me to decide though, because we're trying to follow Classic Traveller. And it is possible that these could be larger. Like you could make an iris like so, but in order to have an iris working, you essentially need a section behind the wall that fills up, almost, it would be 2 squares at least, if not more. So there are some issues with this. It may be that, we just offer a few alternatives here so that you could have a traditional iris if you want it, or you could have something that makes more sense.
More yeah,
more sense in the sense
have
of
iris, you'd be hard to like. Where is it going to go up at? I mean, you have no up to roll it
yeah,
into.
exactly. That's what I mean with the floor irises. That's not an issue, right? Because you've got plenty of room to work with. But when it's built into the wall, either you've got a very small circle to go through. Because the other thing to remember is traveler ships operate under artificial gravity, so an iris makes sense in 0G, but it makes less sense when you've actually got gravity, because then you've got a potential tripping hazard when you want to move through one section to the other. Not to mention the fact that I would have
mechanics are a lot more durable is the problem. I mean, the reason you'd want to use it in game mechanics is because an iris hatch it's a lot tougher to get through. So if you wanted to like secure something so that somebody couldn't just board and smash through it, an iris hatch is a lot tougher.
All right, so this makes a little bit more sense to me, or at least it's helping me with that. So, I mean, the other thing too is if you do take that logic and look at where the irises are placed, it is between engineering and between the bridge. And those are 2 places you might want passengers to avoid, right? So it makes a certain degree of sense. But like I said, I'm just gonna wait for feedback from Mark, because we could potentially make this a little bit wider, for the door frames in particular. But yeah, this is probably about the size you could go and still be able to fit into like a 2x2 inch sort of square. All right.
Yeah, this is all new ground. It wasn't like these ships were originally designed to be, 3D. They were originally designed to be pen and paper, just little squares on graph paper, and that's all it was.
Exactly, and that's sort of the challenge of things. And like, I've kind of like 3Dified some of these walls. I was just comparing. I'll just move this back. I was just comparing our existing sort of staterooms that we had to these. Ideally, I'd love to be able to make the Beowulf so that you could just switch out whichever style you want. These are way back from Starship 1. I'm pretty sure we have higher detailed ones of these somewhere. But that's another issue with the Beowulf refreshers in particular. Like, we were talking about the floor space being really bad on that level. Look at the size of the freshers on this level. This has got a slanted floor. Sorry?
What's a fresher?
It's a toilet.
Bathroom.
Toilet shower.
Oh. Thank you.
It's a bathroom.
Yeah, essentially.
Poo-poo place. Thank you.
It is. Yeah, you can call it a poo-poo place if you want. We are not we have to keep things PG for Traveller. That is a stipulation of the contract. So that means basically there was no stipulation about the streams. I usually swear like an Australian on the stream.
You've already sworn today several times.
I haven't even noticed I swore. I didn't use the C word today. Right?
But
they'll get you a sticker with a dinosaur saying, "Great job."
The circular pattern, it eventually divided opens. The rolling one acts like a yin-yang circle coming apart. Yeah.
Yeah, Rakah 333 triple threat said it like a rolling iris works, and it does work.
Oh, there are 3D models out there where you could actually build a working iris. I think at this scale, it's not a really good scale for it. It would work okay in SLA, I think, but very, very fiddly. I had thought about it. It all depends on the size of them. So yeah, there are some inconsistencies where things were matching up. One of them, like I said before, was actually the landing gear. Now, the landing gear, if we look at let's go back to our references, and I had here somewhere this version. So let's see if we can open this and zoom in a bit closer.
Right, gotcha. Rax talking about the rolling iris using the yin yang type style.
That's what happens when you have a dangling participle.
He's
That's
going
how
the one
English
he
works.
was the one from Game Mechanics that they show in the mock-ups and the drops, it being a multi sealed like that. So
Okay, well that could be something to look into. But basically, the landing gear on the Scout as it is has a few issues. I don't know if this is supposed to be so that the pads actually just slot into this section. But the actual Scout that we're using is taller than this one. This is probably about the 7 meter mark. Oh, maybe not. Maybe a little higher, but we're at 9, and the thickness changes a little bit here. But you can kind of see too in the plans that they have these sort of landing pads with a little bit of access. The landing pad location I've actually moved slightly because it just is in an awkward position. So now I actually changed it 90 degrees. I don't think it looks that bad. So let's...
If I may ask, what are these giant thick walls? Are they like the...
Oh, the
for
thick
safe-
walls, they're bulkheads.
Thank you.
I'll get some fuel tanks.
Yeah. There's probably more in there than there needs to be, but it was also about getting the walls in place, and the interiors are actually ended up being slightly larger than this model. Once I decided to put the actual built-in floors in, and then on the level above, we've actually lowered the floor so it's also built in, but a little bit closer. So I honestly, the attic is something that's obvious to me because they have the jump drive in there. What's not obvious to me is actually the lower deck, if this is supposed to be cargo storage or not. So that is a bit more of a challenge. I can turn off the lighting here so it's a bit easy to see. I've kind of got a depressed floor there because I was thinking, oh, you could get some cargo in, but no matter what, you're not going to be able to get these cargo crates, right? The ship's just too small for that. And, that's not what a Scout crew area is actually for. So,
no, but it is supposed to be able to land in atmosphere, which is why it's shaped like that and why it has so much wasted space. The waste space is so it can be atmospheric.
Yeah, and the wasted space is basically your fuel tanks.
That makes more sense. Thank you. I've learned. Da-dun-dun.
Yeah, because that's one thing we haven't been doing with my ships is we haven't been including a place for fuel storage. We've just kind of assumed it was, Star Warsy, hand wavium. But the landing gear, I'm trying to wrap my head around whether or not it's feasible, but let's get the lighting on because this will look nice. And I've actually changed the orientation so it's 90 degrees, mostly so we could have a smaller space and you actually get back this space behind it. But then also because the landing gear as designed did not fit where it was supposed to. So there's always, a change from in perspective. I've animated this so you can kind of see how it works now. And, this will tuck nicely away. So either we'll have a folded up version and an extended version. We may do some kind of rest that you could put it on so you can still put on your table when the landing gear are retracted. I'd love to make this work so that you could just have landing gear and you could raise or lower them. We do have a number of parts that use built-in hinges. The problem is that this is supposed to support the ship, and I'm not sure I trust it. At the same time, we usually make a really awesome pitch video for our Kickstarters because right next door we have an animation studio that works with stop motion. This time we're kind of wanting to go all out with it. We're going to build this awesome. We think at the moment it's going to be a jungle planet with a D-class spaceport or something like that. So just a few outlying buildings. And we're hoping to have the Beowulf in the foreground, and in the background a Scout that kind of comes up almost like Thunderbird style. So like we'll have it recessed under the floor, and then these landing doors will open, and it'll just raise up and turn as it does. And then I'd really like to do a sequence where we can actually do a launch sequence in some way.
That would be stellar.
It would. It would. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yes.
And I suppose then the other issue we're going to have is with lighting, where we're going to put things, because I don't think the engines make a ton of sense. If we put the main deck back on and look at our layout here, I don't know. I have assumed that this means machinery, like this diagonal pattern. And the engines are just here, that's the thrusters, but how they connect to each other, I don't know. I assume there could be power plants or something in here.
Are the power plants. The slashes you have there is the power plant on the scout ship.
Okay, so what, it has 2 power plants?
Well, they're 2 separate engine power plants, but yeah, one for each side.
Right. But then there's the kind of connection, because to me it doesn't make a ton of sense that you have a passage behind the engines. Or in front of the engine.
Assuming that they're thinking that the piping would go overhead and you'd walk under it.
Fair enough. That could probably be, better. Or we could have some piping on the floor that you sort of move over a sort of hump or something, maybe.
Yeah, either way, but it would be basically kind of like a conduit that you're walking through the engine room. It's supposed to be the bowels of the engine room, so there's conduits around. You just have a walking cleared space, like walking down a steam tunnel, and you get those pipes along the walls, and all that kind of crud. It's still a square chamber, but you got all the piping coming along the edge, and it's the same thing going to be in the engine room, I would assume, because that would be the visualization that I would see in the style that they describe in the book.
So I'm thinking that we maybe, and Zorama, you're the expert here, but if I turn off the main deck floor there for the engineering, I think this cargo area is probably where we're going to have our battery space. We could actually build in a switch to the back part here. Because
I'll put the switch. I can put a switch in the engine room and a switch in the back panel. I'll put a back panel flip up. I'll put both, and we'll wire 2 switches in it so it's inside if you have the top off, or you can have it from that back. And we'll wire we'll use the standard LEDs that we've used and already for the back engines, and a conical mount, and then we'll put the piping and the wiring. We'll run it through whatever piping is connected, or we'll create piping for connection, and between the engine, and then we can put the batteries inside the motor area itself, because we can put a fairly large battery in there.
Well, we do have a little section on the inside that I think we could see. I have shifted the doors 1 inch in that direction. But yeah, I don't know if that's
Plenty of room in order to put lighting in the back without a problem. The engine lighting shouldn't be a problem. I think that you kind of described wanting lighting on the tips, like at the very, of the triangle on, like the front.
there should be like what's it called, the green and the red light to show which orientation it is.
Right. So we'll do those probably on the same battery run off the engines, so that it's all one battery running all that.
Can they blink whilst the other ones are just on?
Yeah, sure. We're gonna do that.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, we'll set them to blink simultaneously in sequence, and that'll be how those work. And then we'll have a different battery and setup for the front nose for the avionics section. We'll put it up in the avionics.
The avionics is a little bit more troublesome, but there is a fair amount of room that we can use. The main thing is going to be, this is also an issue with the landing gear here. Like the way it's built, it just does not fit. So I'm going to have to re-engineer this. I'm probably going to move it, and this is the part where I might frustrate a few old timers that really want a traditional scout ship. This is even Mark sort of understands that we're going to have to make a few compromises for this to actually work in 28mm, like detailed exterior interior. So the Scout's going to be tight. So I'm probably just going to move this back like an inch and then up into the ship a little bit, and then we'll just make this a harder angle.
You can move it back for the, yeah, okay. I was going to say you could probably, even though they have those 3 squares for the avionics, I mean, even those with the representation of the avionics, I mean,
Well,
the idea is
this version, the avionics is actually above the. Let me turn it on. Let's see, deck plan upper. Was that it? No, that's the wrong one. Hang on. There's so many deck plans. Deck plans. Planes. There we go. And we want the upper deck plane. That's that one, which is the.
If you're watching this stream and have suggestions that you think there are things we should or shouldn't do in the ship, by all means, feel free to contribute, and we will happily take into account any of your suggestions as we read through them. You know, because we're interested in trying to get feedback from everybody. That's why we do these live sessions.
The avionics in this one are actually above the cockpit. Very cramped, so probably not going to be detailed in that sense. So I've kind of assumed that these 3 squares are actually for the landing gear.
Well, it could be you just have the avionics around it. I mean, it doesn't have to be. It's not like they're representational of the fact that there's avionics in the front. That's all, and that they take up some squares. That's all.
Yeah, we'll just put some machinery in the sides here, and there is supposed to be some kind of access panel here. So yeah, it'll just be a case of
walk down the avionics or anything.
Yep.
It's kind of like a Jeffrey tube, effectively, of avionics. That's about it.
Yeah. And speaking of Jeffrey tubes, I was thinking that maybe as a compromise for all of this other stuff that's going on, we could actually take the central. It's a little hard to see, but if we get down here, right now I've actually covered off the bulkheads, but you can see there's kind of like a crawl space sized area that could run, you know, down this corridor a little bit if you just want to get like some crawl spaces into the ship. Mind you, that could be cutting into fuel storage, so maybe not. We'll see. So yeah, there are quite a number of things that we're doing at the moment to try and get things to fit, or that I'm doing rather. You might not think there's been a ton of progress since last week, but half the work is just trying to wrap your head around it. And we're doing this work now because later it is so much worse to try and fix. Already I've kind of had to decide, well, we're going off this base version because looking at the references, I was given, you know, this version with Murphy. Let me just move this over a little bit more so you guys see more of a picture. And there's also an empty version that are in the same deck plans. And these deck plans do not actually match these deck plans, believe it or not. So it's frustrating to some degree. For those travelers that are with us, we have the license for the next 4 years at least. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mark is happy to extend that, provided that he's happy with the work and the way that things are going. So we usually do 1 to 2 Kickstarters a year, which is sort of like, you know, we put out a ship concept that we've worked on for, you know, 3 or 4 months. This time it'll be closer to, you know, 5 or 6 months before we actually get the campaign out. And then usually we try and have stretch goals on our Kickstarters so that you get a bunch of variants. So basically, the more that the project gets financed, the more customizable you'll be able to make it. And, you know, hopefully we can see a scenario in the future where we can use Deck Designer to help you plan out, you know, the appearance of the interiors and whatnot. The Scout ship, like I said, I think will be a little bit harder. So it'll probably, instead of cases of, you know, modularity like you would want on an actual grid, we'll have to have something that's a little bit more customized or specific to the scout ship, like the engine placement and machinery and whatnot. But you'll be able to choose, for example, if you wanted to have 2 aircraft bays instead of just an airlock sort of room at the back, you could do that, or vice versa. We might look at doing, I know the other popular scout variant is like is it a Type J mining ship or something like that? So we could kind of look at that configuration and see how close we could get that. But the idea is to do 1 or 2 ships per Kickstarter. So this is just the first with, the 2 most iconic player ships. At a certain point, like our biggest ship, the Chimera, is 3 feet in length, or 90 centimeters. It weighs about 5 kilos, and it buckles under its own sort of weight with the modularity. So it barely fits together.
It does fit. It's just enjoying. It's relaxing.
Well, the engines are quite heavy, and they like to relax a lot. Kind of like myself. But it's something to consider. So we probably won't be going 28mm large. But there's already a couple of people that have been talking to me about, they've already got existing Traveller models. And what we have done in the past is make some variants of the ships where we've done miniatures, tactical miniatures. So, you can play on a hex grid or a grid that's, sort of one inch. Like, in fact, we put those out. Let's see, I was just on Facebook before, but we've got, let's see if I can find it on my mini factory. If I just come into my library, you can see that we just put out some miniatures. There'll be more next week for our older ships, and we usually do those in 38mm, 1 to 270 scale, which is X-wing, and then we also do the tactical size. So you can kind of see the comparison here. This ship, the Scout Ship Beta, if I just go in and view, so you can see the beautiful render that Albin did. You can see the difference in scale there. So this is a sort of tactical scale, and this is more like a display scale sort of thing. So it's possible we may release beforehand more like tactical miniatures. Probably not for every single possible variant, but that is a part of Traveller, right? No matter which version, ship-to-ship combat.
Yeah. That'd be a good idea to release that first and to have those so people can play with them, even if to do ship combat.
Yeah. So, from what I envisage doing, the reference material we've been provided with, there have been a number of different ships that Mark's thought of. He's looked into the Corvette. This, at a certain point, some of the ships, the issue is actually their configuration. It's very hard to make them stable and support them. So the other one he sort of looked at, this would be way too big, I think, to do a Colonial Cruiser. So I think, honestly, we're looking at 200 to 400 tons max.
So doing a Cunardar? That's giant.
Yeah, I know. I would love to see it, but I don't think it's doable. But there are some ships that are built a certain way, like for example the Sleipnir that we did, which is the Expanse ship behind me. That side, the black one. It actually is more stable because it's stacked vertically. So that works quite well. And a lot of the ships are actually comparable. It's just the size can vary, and then also it gets expensive. Our last ship.
I would like to see Cunardar, though. That would be cool.
It would be cool. I should get this off there before we generate too much excitement.
Exciting.
All right. Yes. Let me see where I was. Let's get back into Maya. So there's not a ton of Maya work going on today, mostly because we've got 5 minutes left. We usually just do this for an hour. But I think it's important to just discuss some of the ideas behind here, I've seen some versions of the landing gear which has like an access point, so I've added that. I like to add little details and things. Mark was more like, it's all right if we just have this really basic version, and we may well just have some tiles which have his, semiotic standards, so that you can. I guess what I'm trying to get to is the modularity is something that we'll probably approach in the future, where we'll just make modules and you can put them together if you just want to make the deck plans. This time we're focusing on a ship, or two ships rather, and that's going to take up a ton of our time. In fact, that's why Albin is on this project, because I just cannot manage two ships by myself anymore at the level of detail I usually do. So yeah, it is very, very fun though,
Yeah.
to work on Traveller, and I think Albin's having a good time too, right?
Woohoo!
So yeah, the love to see the spheroid ship. That is actually more possible than I would have thought, because I've looked at it, and this would involve the deck stacking. What's the name of the spheroid one?
Spheroid, is it like a Death Star?
A very, very small Death Star.
God, you talking about the X-boat?
No, not the X-boat, because we have the X-boats on this one. That's the X-boat, right? Express boat.
Mm-hmm.
That would be fully possible. It's very small. Now I'm talking about the other one that's like a ball with 4 legs on it.
Overlord type looking one. Okay, yeah, you're talking about the Mercenary Cruiser.
Yes. Yeah. So like if I just do a search for Mercenary Cruiser here, it's this one that's sort of ball shaped. This looks absolutely massive, but looking at the deck plans, because of the way it stacks, it might actually be more plausible than I thought. I mean, it's still quite large, but doing this kind of ship is more reasonable than trying to go to a much larger scale with something that's longer, because you're going to have gravity helping you out for the most part. If you can
the players are more likely to own certain ships, and it's makes sense for us to make those ships being able to get in and walk around and do stuff in.
Yeah, so we'll probably eventually do like the safari ship, or Mark really wants us to do a Varga ship. So
yeah, I know. He wants the Varga Corsair, which is probably the one we should do, because it'll make him so happy.
Yes, and we're gonna make Mark happy, right?
Right.
Or is it Corsair?
Corsair.
I spelled that
See, I know
wrong.
my
This is a bit of a whack ship to make. But you know what? I kind of like it in a way. The wings are an issue. There's a lot of... Oh, that's a hex-based one. I haven't seen that before. And it's 400 tons, right? So, or something like that. So this is a little bit on the large... This is a better one.
It's a beautiful ship.
It is. And I'd love to see it with the, pirate thing. Like, one of my earliest influences, it was, aside from Macross, and I loved the space anime from that sort of period, but Space Captain Harlock was a big one as well. So I love seeing the skull and crossbones on a spaceship. So this will probably happen at some point, because it looks like it could be done ish.
The other one you're going to need to do is the Far Trader.
The Far Trader, yes, it is. That's only 200 tons, right? Isn't it?
That's 400. It's 400 tons, but it's got to jump too.
Right. So it may be possible. We're gonna basically, if you're gonna bother printing one of these ships, because if I'm gonna be honest, the Cerberus that I showed at the top of the stream has taken me on one printer more or less 5 or 6 weeks to actually print out, and I've had some misprints. That's what happens when you prototype, but I've run through, say, a good closer to 4.5, 5 kilos of plastic. So that these are big projects. It's not just something that you can print out overnight and hope to bring to your tabletop, next week. It's something you've got to plan over months, essentially. So the ships we're going to focus on are ships that people are likely to want to print for player ships. And
By
this
the
is,
Fort Trader and the Beowulf and the basic traders and the basic ship that might attack them. That's about it.
yes. So those kind of things, or the smaller stuff that's just a little bit more manageable. So, and mind you, we may do miniatures of other ships that are just these reduced things, so that we can have some official 3D printable ships again. Because I do believe Traveller miniatures have been out of print for a long time now.
Yeah.
Out of print or out of production, rather. And this kind of I love supporting the 3D printing community because 3D printers are becoming much more approachable than they used to be. Consumer prices are coming down a lot, even for SLA, which is resin printers, which is good for the smaller stuff. It carries the detail better. Although I do deal almost exclusively in designs for FDM. One thing to name is that we will be having miniatures of the actual crew themselves making an appearance. So we will have a selection of, probably won't be a huge amount, but you'll see some iconic Traveller creatures like some Varga, like Battle Dress, and that process has already started for the humans. We've just got to figure out what creatures that Pickle's going to do.
Aslan and the Chirper.
Yeah, but I'm kind of of a mind that we do the next campaign we have a human ship, or Solomani, or whatever you want to call it, and then we have one alien theme, and then we release an Aslan ship with Aslan crew or whatever. Or
Volani, by the way.
Sorry?
Volani. The race is
Volani.
Volani.
Right, yes.
That's the human.
Yes.
You don't want to say Solomani because that's wrong.
No, that's just an empire of humans, right?
Yes, it's original soul, and it's the enemies of the Spinward Marches where the game is set.
Right. So I get things confused because I'm only a casual Traveller player, but that's also where I've got Zorima. I've also got, of course, Mark, and I've also got a mate that's been there since the beginning as well. Who knows? Who has way too many bookshelves?
I've played Traveller since the '70s, so I've been playing a long time.
Yeah.
So I know most ships by the back of my hand. So.
Very good. So hopefully this provides a few insights to those that are unfamiliar with my work. Check out our existing ships. You can kind of see a lot of them on my Mini Factory, which is our primary distribution channel. So where you can find the ships for the cheapest. So just so you guys know, these are designs to print yourself or get printed on a 3D printing service. So we're not going to make a physical ship. It's just
you have
practical.
Could print one for you at a high cost if that turns into something you want to do, but it might be cheaper to buy your own printer and do it.
Yeah. Traveller, at the moment, is cheaper to buy your own printer, and I think even if we did, get some of these done up in resin or something like that, the amount of plastic in them,
pricey.
Yeah, it would be very pricey, very heavy. So yeah. All right. Okay, guys, it's now 4:04, so it's time to start wrapping things up. We do this stream every Friday. We may move it to a Wednesday or something in the future, but at the moment we're still doing it on Fridays. And yeah, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Zorima, and thanks also to John.
The Discords.
Yes, I was waiting for John to say he's been there the whole time, but perhaps he wandered off. He usually does have work to get to at a certain point in the stream. And of course, Albin in the background, who has actually been making me productive by continuing to work on things whilst I show you guys. So next week it'll be more an actual development stream where we show you some more work. But yeah, guys, don't be shy to ask questions or interact with us. We do check the chat occasionally. And yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you guys next week. All right, bye, guys.